Admiral Chris Palmer stood on the bridge of the carrier Endurance, watching the stars through the massive window. He was a tall man, thin and quiet, with the kind of face that never showed what he was thinking. He had served in the human fleet for 30 years, and he had been waiting for this moment his entire career. The Velnorians were coming. 300 warships against his fleet of 84. By any normal calculation, the humans should surrender. They should beg for mercy. They should accept their fate and hope the aliens would be kind. But Chris Palmer had studied history. He knew what humans were capable of when their backs were against the wall. And he knew that numbers did not always decide who won a war. He called a meeting in the war room. His senior officers gathered around the large table, their faces serious but not afraid. Captain Megan Cole stood near the door, her arms crossed. Lieutenant Commander Sam Harris sat at the table, reviewing data on his tablet. A dozen other officers filled the room, all of them ready to hear what their admiral had to say. "I will not lie to you," Palmer began. "The Velnorians have us outnumbered almost 4-1. Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are more powerful. Their armor is thicker. If we fight them the way they expect us to fight, we will lose." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But we are not going to fight them the way they expect." He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above the table. It showed images from human history, battles fought long before anyone had dreamed of traveling to the stars. "The Velnorians have studied us," Palmer said. "They know how many ships we have. They know what weapons we use. They know that our bodies are weak and our technology is inferior. What they do not know is this." The display changed to show an ancient battle. Thousands of soldiers in bronze armor stood in a narrow pass between mountains, facing an army of hundreds of thousands. "This is Thermopylae," Palmer said. 300 warriors against an empire of millions. They held that pass for 3 days, killing so many enemies that the ground was covered in bodies. They all died in the end, but they showed the world that a small force with courage and strategy could stand against impossible odds. The display changed again. A frozen city, ruined buildings, soldiers fighting in the snow. "Stalingrad," Palmer continued. One city refused to fall. The defenders were starving, freezing, dying by the thousands every day. But they did not surrender. They fought for every street, every building, every room. And in the end, they won. More images appeared. Jungles and mountains and deserts. Small groups of fighters facing massive armies. Throughout our history, we have faced enemies who were stronger than us, who had more soldiers than us, who had better weapons than us. And again, we found ways to win. Not because we were more powerful, but because we were more stubborn, more creative, more willing to do whatever it took to survive. Captain Cole spoke up. "The Velnorians have never lost a war. Their tactics have worked for 100 years. Why would they change now?" Palmer smiled slightly. "That is exactly the problem. They have never had to adapt. They have never faced an enemy who did not fight by their rules. They believe that war is simple. You have more ships, you win. You have bigger guns, you win. They do not understand what we understand." "And what is that, sir?" Lieutenant Harris asked. "That war is not about strength," Palmer said. "It is about will. It is about who wants to win more. It is about who is willing to suffer more, sacrifice more, endure more than the other side." He looked around the room at his officers. "The Velnorians want to conquer us, but we are fighting for our homes, our families, our survival. We have everything to lose, and that makes us more dangerous than any fleet." He brought up a tactical display showing the space around Kepler 442b. "Here is what we are going to do. The Velnorians expect us to meet them in open battle. They expect us to line up our ships and fight them head-on. Instead, We are going to disappear." The officers exchanged confused looks. "Disappear, sir?" Cole asked. Palmer nodded. "We will power down our ships and hide in the asteroid belt on the far side of the system. The Velnorians will arrive and find nothing. No fleet waiting for them. No resistance. They will think we have surrendered or fled. And then?" Harris asked. "And then they will get comfortable. They will spread out their fleet to support the ground invasion. They will lower their guard. And when they are at their most vulnerable, we will strike." He zoomed in on the orbital approach to the planet. General Morrison's ground forces have spent the last 3 years preparing for this. The approach lanes are filled with mines. Thousands of them, too small for Velnorian sensors to detect easily. When their ships try to reach bombardment range, they will fly straight into a trap. "How many mines?" Cole asked. "Enough to hurt them," Palmer said. "Enough to make them afraid. And while they are dealing with the mines, while their fleet is scattered and confused, we will come out of hiding and hit them with everything we have." He turned off the display and looked at his officers. "I know this plan is risky. I know some of us will die. But this is what humans do. We find the weakness in our enemy. We use their confidence against them. We fight dirty when we have to, and we never, ever give up." Lieutenant Harris raised his hand. "Sir, what if it does not work? What if they are too strong?" Palmer was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a calm, steady voice. "Then we make them pay for every inch of space they take. We make this victory cost them so much that they think twice before attacking another human world. We show the galaxy that humanity is not prey." He paused. "But it will work. I have faith in our people. I have faith in our history. We have been winning impossible battles for 10,000 years. This is just one more." The officers nodded, their fear replaced by determination. "Get to your ships," Palmer ordered. "We have work to do. And remember, the Velnorians think they know what war is. They are about to learn that they know nothing at all." As the officers filed out of the room, Captain Cole stopped beside the Admiral. "Do you really believe we can win this?" she asked quietly. Palmer looked out the window at the distant stars. "I believe that our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. I believe they crossed oceans in wooden boats and conquered mountains with their bare hands. I believe that somewhere in our blood, there is something that refuses to die." He turned to face her. "So yes, Captain, I believe we can win this. Because giving up is simply not something humans know how to do." Cole nodded and left the bridge. Admiral Palmer stood alone, watching the stars, thinking about all the battles that had come before. Somewhere out there, the Velnorian fleet was approaching, confident in their coming victory. They had no idea that they were about to face the most stubborn species in the galaxy. 2 weeks had passed since the Velnorians landed on Kepler-4 42b. High Commander Varteth had expected to conquer the planet in 3 days. Instead, he was trapped in a nightmare that grew worse with every passing hour. The main fleet had finally arrived, 300 warships filling the sky like angry gods. They had spent 5 days clearing enough mines to create safe approach lanes. They had lost 23 more ships in the process, destroyed by weapons they could barely see. But eventually, they had reached the planet. Eventually, they had begun landing troops by the thousands. And that was when the real horror began. General Katie Morrison had studied human military history since she was a child. She knew about the great battles, the famous victories, the legendary commanders. But the lessons she valued most came from the smaller wars, the guerrilla campaigns, the times when ordinary people had fought against impossible odds and won through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. She had trained her soldiers in these lessons, and now they were putting them into practice. The Velnorians expected the humans to form defensive lines. They expected traditional combat, army against army. Instead, they found ghosts. Human soldiers appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the Velnorians could respond. They attacked supply convoys in the dead of night. They planted explosives on parked vehicles. They shot officers from hidden positions a mile away. Colonel Danny Webb led one of these strike teams. He and his soldiers had been moving through the mountains for 3 days, living on emergency rations and sleeping in caves. They were tired, dirty, and hungry. But they were also very, very effective. "Target approaching," whispered Sergeant Amy Parker, looking through her scope. "Supply column, 12 vehicles. Light escort." Webb lay beside her in the rocks, studying the road below. The Velnorian supply convoy was moving slowly, following the winding mountain path. They had armored vehicles at the front and rear, but the middle trucks were soft targets, carrying food and ammunition for the troops in the valley. "Wait for my signal," Webb said quietly. They waited. The convoy came closer. The Velnorian soldiers looked bored, unaware of the danger hiding in the rocks above them. They had grown careless over the past 2 weeks, frustrated by an enemy they could not find. Now, Webb said, "The first rocket hit the lead vehicle, turning it into a fireball that blocked the road. The second rocket destroyed the rear guard. The convoy was trapped. Human soldiers emerged from the rocks on both sides, firing down at the helpless Velnorians. It was over in less than a minute. The supply trucks burned, their cargo destroyed. The escort lay dead on the road. "Move out," Webb ordered. "We have 3 minutes before their air support arrives." The team vanished into the mountains, leaving nothing behind but fire and bodies. This was happening all over the planet. Every day, human teams struck at Velnorian positions. Every night, explosions echoed through enemy camps. Velnorian commanders were found dead in their quarters, killed by assassins who came and went like smoke. Communication equipment was sabotaged. Water supplies were poisoned. Nothing was safe. High Commander Verteth stood in his command center, staring at the map of the planet. Red marks showed where his forces had been attacked in the past 24 hours. There were so many marks that they nearly covered the entire map. "We have lost 4,000 soldiers this week," Kethel reported. "Supplies are running low because we cannot protect our convoys. Morale is collapsing. The troops are afraid to sleep because they do not know if they will wake up. Then we must crush them," Verteth said. "We must find their bases and destroy them. We have the numbers. We have the firepower. Use it. We have tried, High Commander. But every time we advance on a position, they are gone before we arrive. They do not stay and fight. They run and then they attack us from behind. It is like fighting shadows." Verteth slammed his fist against the console. "This is not war. This is cowardice. They hide and strike and run away like animals." Kethel hesitated before speaking. "Perhaps, High Commander, perhaps that is the point. Perhaps they know they cannot defeat us in open battle, so they have chosen a different kind of war. One where our strength does not matter." Verteth was silent. He was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans were not trying to win. They were trying to make winning cost so much that the victory became meaningless. Far above the planet, Admiral Chris Palmer watched and waited. His fleet was still hidden in the asteroid belt, powered down, invisible. He had been tracking the Velnorian fleet movements for 2 weeks, watching them spread out to support the ground invasion. The enemy ships were no longer in tight formation. They were scattered across orbit, trying to cover too much space with too few vessels. The moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. "All ships," he said calmly, "begin power-up sequence. We attack in 15 minutes." Across the asteroid belt, 84 human ships came alive. Their engines glowed blue in the darkness. Their weapon systems hummed with deadly energy. Crews who had been waiting for 2 weeks finally had something to do. Captain Megan Cole stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the Swift Arrow. She was nervous, excited, and determined. This was what she had trained for her entire life. "All stations report ready," her first officer said. "Good," Cole replied. "Remember our orders. Fast and aggressive. We hit them hard, cause as much damage as possible, and do not let them regroup. This is not a battle of attrition. This is a knife fight in the dark." The fleet moved out of the asteroid belt in perfect coordination. They came from an unexpected angle, appearing on Valnorian sensors only moments before they were in weapons range. Admiral Palmer's voice came over the fleet communication system. "All ships, engage. Make them remember this day." The human fleet struck like a hammer. Small, fast, and deadly, the human ships tore into the scattered Valnorian formation. They did not try to fight fair. They ganged up on individual ships, 3 or 4 human vessels against one enemy, overwhelming them with coordinated fire before moving to the next target. The Valnorians tried to respond, but they were not prepared for this. Their ships were spread too thin. Their communications were confused. By the time commanders understood what was happening, they had already lost a dozen vessels. Vor single quotes Te watched from the Eternal Dominion as his fleet was torn apart. "Where did they come from?" he shouted. "The asteroid belt," Cathal replied, his voice shaking. "They were hiding there the entire time. We never thought to look. The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships darted between larger Valnorian vessels, exploiting weaknesses, avoiding the heavy weapons that could destroy them in one shot. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were faster, smarter, and fighting for their home. When it was over, the Valnorians had lost 87 ships. The humans had lost 20-3. Admiral Palmer looked at the destruction floating in orbit and felt no joy. Those 23 ships had been crewed by good people, brave people who had died to protect their world, but they had won. Against all odds, they had won. "Signal to all surviving ships," Palmer ordered. "Withdraw to secondary positions. This is not over yet, but we have shown them what we are capable of." The Valnorians came here expecting easy prey. They found warriors instead. On the surface below, General Morrison received word of the fleet's victory. She allowed herself a small smile before turning back to the map. "Keep up the pressure," she told her officers. "They are hurt and confused. Do not give them time to recover. Hit them everywhere, all at once. Make them feel like they are surrounded by enemies they cannot see." The war was far from over, but for the first time, the Valnorians were starting to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. The war lasted 3 more months. 3 months of blood and fire and endless death. The Valnorians had the numbers and the technology, but the humans had something else. They had the will to keep fighting no matter how bad things got. High Commander Varteth tried everything. He ordered massive bombardments from orbit, but the humans had hidden their important facilities underground. He sent wave after wave of troops into the mountains, but the soldiers who went in never came back out. He established fortified bases across the planet, but every base was attacked within days, sometimes within hours. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning and vanished without a trace. They knew the land, knew the weather, knew every cave and valley and hidden path. The Valnorian soldiers, who had conquered 17 star systems, found themselves afraid to patrol at night, afraid to leave their bases, afraid of an enemy they could rarely even see. And in space, Admiral Palmer kept his fleet moving. He never let the Valnorians pin him down. He appeared, attacked, and disappeared before they could respond. His ships were faster, and his captains were smarter. Every time the Valnorians thought they had him trapped, he found a way to escape and strike again from an unexpected direction. By the end of the third month, the Valnorian invasion force was broken. They had started with 300 warships and 100,000 soldiers. Now they had less than 100 ships and barely 30,000 troops, most of them hiding in their bases, waiting for an evacuation that many doubted would ever come. Vertath stood alone on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His flagship had taken heavy damage in the last battle. Half his crew was dead. The ship limped through space, barely able to hold together. Kethel approached carefully. The tactical officer looked exhausted, his carapace dull and cracked from stress. "Aye, Commander," he said quietly. "We have received orders from the Empire. We are to withdraw immediately. The Senate has decided that Kepler 442b is not worth the cost." Vertath did not respond at first. He stared out at the stars, at the planet that had destroyed his career and shattered his belief in Valnorian superiority. How many ships can still make the journey home? He finally asked. 94, if we leave the most damaged ones behind. And the soldiers on the surface? Kethel hesitated. We can only evacuate about half of them. The rest will have to surrender to the humans. Vertath closed his eyes. Surrendering soldiers to an enemy was the greatest shame a commander could face. But what choice did he have? He had led his people into a trap, and now he had to save as many as he could. "Begin the evacuation," he ordered. "Get our people off that cursed planet. We are going home." The Valnorian fleet withdrew from Kepler 442b 3 days later. The humans watched them go, exhausted but victorious. When the last enemy ship jumped into hyperspace, a cheer went up across the planet. They had done it. They had won. General Morrison stood on the surface, looking up at the sky. The sun was rising, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. It was the most beautiful sunrise she had ever seen. Colonel Webb walked up beside her. He was thinner than he had been before the war, his face lined with new scars and old worries. But he was smiling. "We did it, General," he said. "We actually did it." Morrison nodded slowly. "We did, but it cost us. A lot of good people died for this victory. I know. But they died fighting for something that mattered. They died so that humanity could show the galaxy who we really are." Morrison thought about that for a moment. She thought about all the soldiers who had given their lives, all the pilots who had flown into impossible odds, all the ordinary people who had refused to surrender even when everything seemed hopeless. "What do you think the Valnorians learned from this?" Webb asked. "I think they learned that there are some species you do not want to fight. Some species that are more trouble than they are worth." Morrison looked at him. "I think they learned that humans are one of those species." Far away, across the vast darkness of space, High Commander Vertath arrived home to face the judgment of the Valnorian Senate. He stood before them in the great hall, his damaged armor still showing the scars of battle, and told them what had happened. "We studied their ships," he said. "We studied their weapons. We studied their numbers. And we concluded that they were weak, primitive, easy to conquer. We were wrong." The senators listened in silence. Many of them had never seen Vertath look so defeated. "The humans do not fight the way civilized species fight," Vertath continued. "They do not follow rules. They do not seek honor in battle. They fight to survive, and they will do anything to win. Anything at all." He pulled up images from the war. Burning ships, destroyed convoys, Valnorian soldiers lying dead in places where no enemy was visible. They turned space into a minefield. They turned their planet into a trap. They attacked us every moment of every day, from directions we never expected, using tactics we had never seen. And when we had them outnumbered and outgunned, they still found ways to beat us. The High Chancellor leaned forward. "What do you suggest we do now, Commander?" Should we send a larger fleet? Should we return with overwhelming force? Vertef shook his head. No, we should do what wise hunters do when they encounter something more dangerous than themselves. We should leave humanity alone. We should find easier prey. And we should pray to our gods that they never decide to expand in our direction. The Senate chamber was silent for a long moment. You are saying, the Chancellor said slowly, that we should fear these creatures? These soft, short-lived beings with no claws and no armor? Yes, Verteth replied simply. I am saying exactly that. I have fought many species across many worlds. I have never faced anything like the humans. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the most advanced. But they are the most stubborn. And that stubbornness makes them more dangerous than any enemy we have ever faced. The Senate agreed to leave humanity alone. The Velnorian Empire, which had never lost a war, officially declared the campaign against Kepler 442b to be strategically unnecessary and moved on to easier targets. But the news of what had happened spread across the galaxy. Other species heard about the humans who had laughed at an empire's war cry. They heard about the impossible victory, the tactics that seemed like madness, the sheer refusal to surrender. And for the first time, the galaxy began to understand that there was something different about these strange creatures from the small, blue planet called Earth. Back on Kepler 442b, life slowly returned to normal. The cities were rebuilt. The farms were replanted. The soldiers came home to their families, carrying memories they would never forget. General Morrison retired a year later. On her last day in uniform, she visited the memorial that had been built for the soldiers who had died in the war. Thousands of names were carved into black stone, each one representing someone who had given everything to protect their home. She stood there for a long time, reading the names, remembering the faces. Thank you, she whispered to the dead. You showed the galaxy who we are. You showed them that humanity does not bow to anyone. And because of you, they will think twice before threatening us again. The wind blew across the memorial, carrying the scent of flowers that grew around its base. Katie Morrison smiled, turned, and walked away into a future that her fallen soldiers had died to protect. The war was over. The humans had won. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the Velnorian Empire was very quiet. It would be a long time before anyone tried to conquer humanity again. The galaxy had made a mistake about humanity. The council looked at the numbers and felt safe. Humanity had been traveling through space for only 200 years. The youngest council species had been doing it for 3,000 years. How could these newcomers be a threat? They were about to find out. Annihilation Protocol was not one weapon or one plan. It was everything. Every secret project, every hidden technology, every backup plan that humanity had made since first meeting alien life. It was what happened when a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars against itself decided to prepare for the worst. Within one day of Daniel's murder, the human military began to move. But this was not the military that the council had seen and laughed at. That had been a show, a trick to make humanity look weak and harmless. The real human navy came out of hidden places. Ships rose from secret bases on moons and asteroids. They emerged from stations that looked like civilian buildings. The council had never seen these ships, built with technologies that were not supposed to exist. Admiral Christina Hayes stood on the bridge of her ship, the Reckoning. She was 61 years old and had served in the Navy for 40 years. She had never fired a weapon at a real enemy. None of them had. Humanity's growth into space had been peaceful. That time was over now. All ships report ready, said her second-in-command, Commander Sam Griffin. 1,500 warships. 2 million crew members. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. She opened the channel to speak to every ship in the fleet at once. "This is Admiral Hayes. You know what happened at Covenant Station. Commander Daniel Price was murdered in cold blood. The Council killed him because they see us as animals to be controlled and killed whenever they want." She paused to let the words sink in. "For 200 years, we reached out to the stars with open hands. We offered friendship and peace. That offer was rejected. The Council has made their position clear. Humanity will never be accepted, never be respected, never be safe as long as they have power over us." Her voice grew harder. "So we will take that power away. Annihilation Protocol is not about revenge or conquest. It is about survival. We will destroy the Council's ability to threaten us, and we will do it so completely that no one will ever think about attacking humanity again." She straightened in her chair. "Some of us will not come home, but those who fall will die knowing they protected everyone they left behind. That is what we do. That is who we are. We are human, and we do not go quietly." She gave a sharp nod. "All ships, prepare to jump. First target is Covenant Station. Let us show them what they woke up." The fleet jumped. Covenant Station had defenses. It was the center of galactic government, protected by the combined forces of 17 species. Over 200 warships flew around it. Weapon platforms floated in orbit. Defense systems covered the surface. Against a normal enemy, these defenses would have been more than enough. The human fleet appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation. Immediately, they released electronic weapons that the Council had never seen before. Karath targeting systems went crazy, seeing enemies that were not there while missing the real ones. Moravian shields flickered and died as human computer viruses attacked their networks. Rick's communication channels filled with noise as human jammers blocked their signals. In the first 30 seconds, before anyone fired a single shot, the Council's defenses fell apart. Then the real fighting began. Human weapons were far more powerful than anyone had expected. The Council thought humanity was still using primitive technology. They were wrong. The Reckoning fired its main guns. Metal rods flew at incredible speeds, tearing through 3 Karath destroyers before they could even try to move away. Admiral Hayes watched the battle on her screens, giving orders with calm precision. Second group, launch fighters. Attack their weapon platforms. Third group, engage the heavy ships on the left. The Council forces fought back desperately, but they were beaten in every way. Human ships were faster. Human weapons were stronger. Human crews were better trained. The defensive fleet was destroyed in less than an hour. The survivors ran for the edges of the system. "Enemy fleet is running away," Commander Griffin reported. "The station soldiers are trying to escape. Let them go," Hayes ordered. "We are not here to kill soldiers who are just following orders. Our target is the station itself." The Reckoning moved into position, its weapons pointing at the massive ring that had been the seat of galactic power for thousands of years. "Open a channel to the station," Admiral Hayes ordered. Her face appeared on every screen on the station. "This is Admiral Christina Hayes of the United Terran Navy. You have 15 minutes to get everyone off the station. Anyone who wants to leave can go without being harmed. After 15 minutes, we will fire. There will be no second warning." She ended the transmission. The next 15 minutes were chaos. Shuttles and escape pods launched from every part of the station. Diplomats, workers, and civilians fled the destruction they knew was coming. Human ships held their fire and let the evacuation happen. When the time was up, Admiral Hayes gave the order. The destruction of Covenant Station was complete and thorough. The Reckoning and its sister ships reduced the ancient station to pieces, erasing the symbol of Council authority from existence. But this was only the beginning. Over the next 6 weeks, the human Navy carried out the rest of Annihilation Protocol. They did not invade planets or occupy enemy territory. Instead, they struck at things the Council needed to fight. Shipyards where new warships were built. Fuel stations where ships refilled. Communication networks that let the Council coordinate. Military bases scattered across the galaxy. Each strike was careful and precise. Destroy the military targets. Leave the civilians alone. The Karath homeworld watched helplessly as their orbital defenses were destroyed. The Moravian banking networks went dark as human hackers took them over. Rick's trade routes became impossible to travel as human forces destroyed the beacons that ships needed for navigation. Species that had never lost a war found themselves facing an enemy they could not beat. The Council had more ships than humanity, but numbers meant nothing when you could not communicate, could not coordinate, could not even find your enemy. And humanity was not just fighting with ships and weapons. Information specialists flooded alien networks with messages about the Council's crimes against humanity. Intelligence officers contacted rebel groups on Council worlds. Species that had been conquered or pushed aside by the Council were encouraged to remember their anger. The Council had united 17 species through diplomacy and force. Humanity began to pull those bonds apart. 3 months after Covenant Station's destruction, the Council's military power had been cut by more than half. Their economy was falling apart as trade networks collapsed. Several small species began to question whether following the Council was worth it anymore. Then humanity sent their final message. A single human ship with no weapons jumped into space above Karath Prime, the homeworld of the species that had led the campaign against humanity. It broadcast on every channel, in every language. President Laura Bishop spoke to the galaxy. People of the galaxy, 3 months ago, your Council murdered an innocent man, a diplomat who came in peace. That act started a war none of us wanted. She paused. Humanity did not want this fight. We came to the Council seeking friendship. We were met with hatred and murder. We responded by removing the threat to our survival. But we are not your enemies. We are not conquerors seeking to build an empire. We only want to live in peace. The Council that condemned us no longer exists. Its military is broken. Its authority is gone. But from this destruction, something new can be built. A true community of equals, where no species rules over others. Humanity offers our hand once more, not as beggars asking for acceptance, but as equals ready to work together. We hope you will take it, but understand this. We will never again let anyone threaten our existence. The galaxy has learned what humanity can do when pushed to the edge. We hope that lesson never needs to be repeated. The message ended. The ship jumped away, and across a dozen worlds, people of many species stared at their screens and thought about a future they had never imagined. The months after humanity's message were filled with confusion. The old way of running the galaxy was gone, and nothing had come to take its place yet. Species that had been kept in line by Council power began acting on their own. Some worked with their neighbors. Others fell into old fights that the Council had stopped. President Bishop set up a temporary human meeting place in empty space. It was a small station called New Geneva. It was not much to look at. Just a changed cargo station with basic life support and small rooms. But it sent a message. Humanity was still willing to talk. The first species to send representatives were the Talani. They were the small, furry beings who had been one of the Council's least important members. Their representative was Keth, the same person who had been in the room when Daniel Price was condemned to death. He met with Amy Novak, who was now a captain and humanity's main diplomat. They sat across from each other in a bare room. The weight of history hung heavy between them. "I did nothing," Keth said softly. His translator carried the shame in his voice. "I watched them kill your commander, and I did nothing." Amy looked at him for a long moment. She had spent months remembering that day. Daniel's last order. Her own helplessness. She had expected to feel rage when facing someone who had been there when Daniel died. Instead, she just felt tired. "What could you have done?" she asked. The Karath had already decided. "They would have killed you too. Maybe, but I might have kept some small piece of my honor." Keth's ears pressed flat against his head. "I come now because I believe humanity gives the galaxy its best hope for a different future. The Talani want to be part of that future." This was the first official friendship that humanity made. It would not be the last dot over the next year. Species after species reached out to New Geneva. Some came wanting protection from those who had hurt them before. Others came hoping to trade with humanity's growing industries. A few came simply because they were curious about these strange beings who had turned the galaxy upside down in just a few months. Not everyone came in peace. The Karath government had survived humanity's attacks, but just barely. Their military was a shadow of what it had been. Their economy was broken. Their people were angry and scared. The ruling council blamed humanity for everything. They called for revenge. 6 months after Covenant Station's destruction, a Karath attack force of 20 ships launched a raid on a human colony world called Haven's Rest. They did not attack military targets or important buildings. They attacked families. The attack killed 18,000 people before human defense ships could respond. By the time help arrived, the Karath ships had already escaped, leaving only death behind. Admiral Hayes received the news on the Reckoning, which was now stationed at New Geneva as humanity's main defense ship. She read the reports in silence, her face showing nothing. "Admiral?" Commander Griffin asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Hayes stared at the reports for a long time. 18,000 dead. Families destroyed. Children burned alive in their homes. For what? Anger? Wounded pride? "The Karath wanted to show us they can still hurt us," she said finally. "That we have not truly won until we destroy them completely." They might be right. Hayes turned to face her second in command. "And if we destroy them, what then?" "We become the monsters they always said we were. We prove that humanity cannot be trusted with power." She put down the tablet. "No, we respond, but not with destruction of their whole species. Find out where those ships came from. Find out who gave the order. We take out the guilty, and we leave everyone else alone." It took 2 weeks to trace the attack back to a Karath military base on a small colony world. Intelligence confirmed that the raid had been ordered by a group of extremists within the Karath government. Acting against the wishes of more moderate leaders, the Reckoning jumped into the system with only a few escort ships. Admiral Hayes broadcast her demands. Surrender the people responsible for the Haven's Rest attack or face the consequences. The extremists refused. They launched their remaining ships in a desperate attack. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When it was over, human ground forces landed on the colony and arrested the extremists who had ordered the raid. They were brought to New Geneva, where a court made up of representatives from multiple species judged them for their crimes. The message was clear. Humanity would not allow attacks on civilians. But humanity would also not punish innocent people for the crimes of others. The guilty would pay. The innocent would be left alone. This approach won humanity more friends than 100 military victories could have. Species that had feared human power began to trust human judgment. Even some Karath, those who had opposed the extremists, began reaching out to find a way forward that did not involve endless war. But the greatest test of humanity's new order came from somewhere unexpected. The Morvian Stad, the jellyfish-like beings, had controlled galactic money for thousands of years. They were not warriors. Their power came from controlling the banking systems that made trade between stars possible. When the council fell, the Moravians went home and waited to see what would happen. Now they made their move. A Moravian group came to New Geneva, asking to meet with President Bishop herself. The president agreed and traveled to the station with heavy protection. The Moravian representative was a huge being named Velathan. Its see-through body glowed with changing lights that carried meaning beyond what its translator could say. It floated in a special water tank, looking at the human president with alien eyes. "President Bishop," Velathan said in a voice made by machines. "The Moravian Collective has watched humanity's rise with great interest. You have done what no species has done in 10,000 years. You destroyed the old Galactic Order." "We did not try to destroy anything," Bishop replied. "We only wanted to survive. And yet, here we are. The old order is dead, and you must decide what will replace it." Velathan's body pulsed with strange colors. "The Collective offers our support. Our money networks, our banking knowledge, our connections across the galaxy. With Moravian help, humanity could build a true galactic government that you would control." Bishop studied the alien carefully. "And what would the Collective want in return?" "Only the same deal we had with the Council. A share of all trade money, control over financial matters, certain protections for Moravian interests. In other words, you want to change masters. Replace the Council with humanity and keep everything else the same." Velathan's body rippled. "You say that like it is something bad." "The Council understood what we offered. Surely humanity, with all your famous practical thinking, can see the value too." President Bishop was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the years of struggle, the lives lost, the principles that had guided humanity through its darkest times. She thought about Daniel Price, killed because he believed in a better way. "No," she said finally. "Thank you for your offer, but no." Velathan's colors showed surprise. "You refuse. Do you understand what you are turning down? Without Moravian support, building a new galactic order will be much harder." "I understand." Bishop leaned forward. "What you are offering is exactly what we fought against when we refused the Council's rules. You want us to become what we destroyed. A power that controls others through money instead of military force. That is not the future we are building. Then what future are you building? One based on real equality. We will not be anyone's masters, and we will not let anyone else be masters either." She stood. "Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in it peacefully, alongside everyone else." Velathan was silent for a long time. "You are either very wise or very foolish," it said finally. "Time will tell which. The Collective will be watching." The Moravians left. Over the following months, they slowly accepted the new reality. Their monopoly on galactic money broke apart as human economists helped other species build their own banking systems. It was not easy, and it was not quick. But piece by piece, a new order began to form.